Discover the incredible moment a CEO transforms a struggling single mother's life with just $100. Lisa wiped her brow as she slid a plate of hot meatloaf in front of an elderly man at the diner. The hum of conversations blended with the clatter of silverware, but the noise that echoed in her mind was louder, a relentless reminder that every day was a struggle. 2 kids at home and the bills piling up felt like an endless loop of despair. The light overhead flickered, just like her hope. She wanted them to have it all: school supplies, sports gear, to feel secure, but love alone didn't fill stomachs. Meanwhile, Thomas adjusted his tie as he entered the community workshop, trying to shake off the weight of a scandal that could ruin him. A flicker of self-doubt crept in as he recalled the latest headlines. The pressure mounted. He needed to regain the community's trust and silence the critics who painted him as out of touch. The workshop on financial literacy seemed like the perfect place to start. After all, he was a man of numbers. Success was always just a calculation away. As Lisa stood up to speak, her voice rang out with a raw honesty that silenced the room. "I worry every day if I can get my kids new shoes. They come home asking for things I can't afford, and I feel so powerless." With each word, she laid bare the fragility of her existence, revealing her truth in stark contrast to the polished world of Thomas. He felt something shift inside him, uneasy, like a knot tightening in his chest. Could he really connect with this? Her reality was a punch to the gut, a reflection of everything he had glossed over in his rise to the top. Before he knew it, he was gripping a crisp $100 bill in his hand after the session ended. "Here, this might help with school supplies," he said, trying to mask the urgency in his voice. Lisa hesitated, the shock on her face enough to break his carefully constructed facade. She finally accepted it, warmth flooding her cheeks, but that small act left him feeling hollow. He had given something he could spare, while she had accepted a lifeline she couldn't afford to turn down. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Days turned into weeks, and with the cash gift, Lisa discovered her hidden talents, leading a small group that aimed to empower others, whereas Thomas found himself drawn deeper into her world, grappling with his monstrous corporate crisis. But every conversation with her was fraught with turmoil. Guilt twisted his insides as he realized how disconnected he was from the very lives he claimed to serve. And just as she began to emerge a woman of strength ready to demand more, another scandal erupted, thrusting him back into a whirlwind he was desperate to escape. As the media painted him with the same brushes as before, the ties of friendship began to feel like chains. Suddenly, the pressure warped their bond into a fight for integrity, leaving him wondering if he could stand by her side when it mattered the most. The tension between their worlds spiraled as Lisa prepared to step into her power, while Thomas faced the terrifying truth of his privilege, a wall he never built but had benefited from without question. In the face of an unexpected scandal that broke on the evening news, a question loomed larger than any headline: could genuine change exist amidst privilege and shame? In that charged moment, choices flickered like embers, setting the stage for their next confrontation. As they both teetered at the brink, the impending storm threatened everything they had begun to build. Lisa felt a strange mix of empowerment and vulnerability as she stood at the front of the small community room, eyes on the eager faces of her group. The simple act of accepting that $100 had sparked something deep within her, a newfound determination. No longer did she want to just scrape by, she craved growth, for herself and her children. It was time to evolve from mere survival to leading a life that meant something more. After weeks of gathering the group, she began to see the possibilities unfold. More than financial literacy, they discussed resilience, creativity in the face of adversity, and how to leverage their skills and passions. Each session ignited a fire in her. This was her calling. As they shared their stories, she started to recognize her own strength: a natural leader, someone who could inspire others to rise above their circumstances. Thomas, on the other hand, was spiraling under the weight of his reality. While Lisa cultivated a thriving community, he found himself increasingly isolated, his efforts to salvage his image tangled with the guilt of his privilege. The 24-hour news cycle condemned him again, reducing his attempts to be earnest into sound bites that the public dismissed as feeble attempts to connect. The more he tried to reconcile his actions with his values, the more he felt his integrity slipping away. Each time he reached out to Lisa, it felt like stepping onto fragile ground. Their previous bond had been innocent enough, based on mutual respect. Yet, in the face of adversity, it began to feel transactional. The lifeline he thought he offered seemed more like a charity case in her eyes. He admired her tenacity from afar, but self-doubt shrouded his intentions. Lisa marveled at how differently they had shifted paths. Her life felt like a blossoming flower, while he wrestled with weeds choking his core. Her sessions empowered her to dream of a future beyond the diner, where she might host workshops that spread hope and knowledge to others like her. Yet, a pang of apprehension gripped her when she thought of Thomas. Could she truly draw strength from someone still entrenched in the very system she sought to challenge? One Thursday evening, the air crackled with anticipation as she prepared for her next group. She stood in front of a whiteboard, ready to write "Believe in your worth" in bold letters. Just then, the door swung open, revealing Thomas. His previous charm had faded. Now, he bore the weight of shame on his shoulders. Lisa's heart raced. A swirling mix of anger and compassion consumed her. "What are you doing here, Thomas?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. He stepped forward, vulnerability etched across his features. "I came to speak with you to make things right." "I see you, Lisa. I see the change you're making." The sincerity in his voice pulled at the edges of her resolve. But could she trust the man who represented the world she wanted to dismantle? As tensions rose, they stood inches apart. She so grounded and ready to seize her future, and he, teetering on the edge of a fall. The stakes were high. Her heart urged her to let go of the past, yet her mind warned her of the peril that could follow. This was the moment where their paths might intertwine once more, or diverge forever. "What are you willing to do to bridge the gap?" she finally demanded, her voice sharp and probing. His eyes searched hers, revealing layers of fear and determination. "I want to help you, but I need you to help me understand." That one question hung between them, heavy with potential. As Lisa considered the depths of that proposition, a new challenge sparked at the tip of her consciousness. Could she teach him, and in doing so, find her own purpose while redefining their very alliance? Lisa stood there, her pulse relentless, as the weight of Thomas's words echoed in her mind. Help him understand? The thought was preposterous, yet embers of curiosity began to smolder within her. Was he seeking genuine change, or simply another way to justify his existence? "Why now?" she asked, her eyes narrowing as she searched his. "What's changed?" "I've spent so long just pushing forward, focusing on appearances, that I never stopped to reflect on what my actions were truly making of my world," he replied, each word weighed with regret. "Seeing you thrive, despite your circumstances, it made me question everything." Lisa absorbed his confession. Beyond his privilege, she glimpsed a man wrestling with shadows. But trust? That felt like a bridge too far. "What's your part in this?" she challenged, her tone a mix of defiance and intrigue. "You come here, asking for forgiveness, but at the heart of it, your desire to help me might just be for you." He nodded slowly, as if her observations had peeled back layers he preferred to keep hidden. "You're right," he admitted. "It selfishly feels like a chance to redeem myself. But what I see in you is something worth fighting for, not just for your sake, but for mine as well." Lisa took a step back, grappling with the complexity of their situation. There was no escaping the reality that he embodied the very world she sought to dismantle, yet beneath the polished surface lay a conflict that resonated with her own struggles. Could they navigate this tension together? "If we do this," she said cautiously, "you'll have to commit to understanding the roots of your privilege, how it has allowed you to exist outside the struggles I face every day." "Then let's start there," he replied, his voice steadying. "I'll listen. I promise." A strange sense of resolve washed over her. This could be her opportunity to bridge the divide, but she felt the pulse of caution thrumming in her veins. Every Thursday, after the group, we'll talk. If you're committed, it won't just be about me teaching you. You'll have to be honest about everything, your past, your decisions. Fair enough, he agreed, with a hint of eagerness creeping in. She weighed the implications of extending her hand to him, questioning if she was truly ready to dance with the very attitudes that had oppressed her. Was she prepared to sink into the murky depths of their shared complexity? As the weight of inadequacy circulated in her chest, she pushed the doubts aside. She needed to be pragmatic. Understand this, I want to be a means to an end. I will hold you accountable. If you genuinely want to change, it'll demand more than just listening. I understand, he replied, his intensity mirroring her own. I need to be tested. His response sent a jolt through her, reminding her of her own capacity to rise amid judgment and hardship. He wasn't just looking for knowledge, he was seeking transformation. Perhaps, together, they could forge something neither had anticipated. As she turned to gather her materials for the evening session, Lisa felt an electric current of determination dance through her. In a world where she had always been defined by her circumstances, the idea of redefining her relationship with Thomas felt thrilling and frightening in equal measure. Could she truly reshape their fates? The air was thick with tension as they prepared to separate, and just before stepping away, Thomas turned back. Thank you, Lisa. Regardless of where this leads, I appreciate the chance. Let us see where it goes, she replied, the gravity of their newfound bond resting heavily on her. In that moment, framed by uncertainty, a question flickered in her mind. What would this mean for her growth, and for the impact she desired to create? As the group arrived, the sound of their laughter filled the room, lingering shadows transformed into possibilities. The foundations of their new relationship framed an uncharted future. But she knew one thing for certain, the journey ahead promised to challenge not just her understanding of him, but also the very essence of who she was and who she aimed to become. Each layer of their alliance peeled back would reveal vulnerabilities and strengths, demanding transformation on both sides. As she faced her group, a faint smile broke her reflective demeanor, hinting at the marvels yet to unfold. With a deep breath, she began, tonight, let us talk about the power we have to rewrite our narratives. In that swirl of voices and newfound hope, Lisa's heart drummed a rhythmic challenge, a blend of anticipation and anxiety. Would the change she embraced lead her to new obstacles, or the strength she desperately sought? A new chapter was brewing, one that would test not only their resolve but also the very fabric of their lives. Lisa entered the community center the following Thursday with a steely resolve. The laughter and chatter of the group washed over her as she glanced at her participants, each carrying their own burdens while wrestling with the chaos of their lives. This was her space, a place she had worked hard to cultivate, and stepping into it meant preparing herself to embrace the complexity of her new alliance with Thomas. Before the session began, her mind wandered. What would it feel like to truly open herself up to someone who embodied a reality she had spent years resisting? Each moment spent with him could lead to profound insights or create a fracture that tested her resilience. As the participants filed in, Lisa caught Thomas's eye. He stood awkwardly at the back, a stark contrast to the vibrant personalities around him. He was visibly different among them, his designer clothes and confident pose a painful reminder of the privileges he carried like armor. Yet today, she sensed something else simmering beneath his surface, determination and uncertainty, like the calm before a storm. All right, let us settle down, she called out, her voice strong, cutting through the noise. She felt the energy shift, a collective heartbeat aligning with her purpose. Tonight, let us talk about narratives, how we tell our stories and what they mean for our future. As she spoke, a flicker of hope ignited within her. Words of empowerment flowed naturally, grounded in her own truth. She urged her listeners to dig deeper, to confront the harsh realities of their lives, asking them to share both triumphs and failures. When the conversation turned to moments of vulnerability, she attracted their attention intentionally. What happens when we feel ashamed of our stories? She posited. When we hide parts of ourselves to fit in or to avoid judgment? Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his seat but didn't shy away. I think we often fear what others might think, he said, the depth of his voice contrasting with the lightness of his surroundings. But hiding hurts. It's exhausting. Lisa nodded, impressed by his willingness to engage. Exactly. And the only way to rewrite those narratives is to embrace every part of them, even the painful bits. As discussions flowed, Lisa noticed a shift in her connection with Thomas. His presence, once a source of skepticism, transformed into a catalyst for her own growth. It struck her that her challenge would not solely lie in guiding him, it might also involve confronting her own narrative, reframing her perceptions of opportunity and success. Midway through the session, Thomas raised his hand. "I have to admit something," he began, his voice unsteady yet courageous. "I used to avoid conversations like this. I didn't think they mattered. But being here, it's changing how I view my impact on others. I realize now I've viewed people as projects rather than individuals." His vulnerability was met with gasps and whispers of encouragement. Lisa's heart swelled, igniting a spark of a possible change within him. But a question lingered: could he sustain this level of honesty away from their meetings? The face of transformation was unveiled, yet the journey was just beginning. As the session concluded, participants voiced their appreciation for the safe space she had fostered. Lisa stood, overwhelmed by their gratitude, feeling both empowered and wary. Thomas approached her post-session, his aura altered, less of a confrontational presence, and more akin to a student hungry for growth. "I feel like I might finally begin to understand what purpose looks like," he shared, his eyes earnest. "What can I do next?" "You'll start by going deeper into your own history," Lisa replied, level-headed. "And bring the stories you uncover into our conversations. I'll hold you accountable." That moment, a union of her leadership and his desire for redemption, carried an exhilarating weight. Together, they were venturing into the unknown, reshaping not only his narrative but potentially her own. As Lisa locked eyes with him, apprehension and excitement mixed within her. She realized that their partnership, could hold the potential to challenge societal norms and self-imposed limitations. What if they were able to craft narratives that inspired others to confront their own realities? To push forward meant embracing uncertainties. Lisa understood that she was embarking on a path where both professional victory and personal growth awaited. Yet a gnawing fear took root in her stomach. Could Thomas genuinely evolve, or was she opening herself to vulnerability that could erode the hard-won boundaries she had set? The tension remained palpable. Their next meeting would need to peel back the veneer of dialogue they had just touched, exposing deeper truths. Unknowns loomed, urging both of them to face the facets of privilege, shame, and the power of empathy. As she left the community center that night, a bubble of anticipation formed. A new challenge awaited them. Would they uncover the truths that lay buried within their uncharted territory? Tomorrow's exchange would test more than their alliance. It would push them both toward the precipice of transformation. The time had come to confront the past in pursuit of a better future. Lisa awoke the next morning with a tightness in her chest, the weight of anticipation pressing down on her. Opening her eyes to the mundane familiarity of her bedroom, she felt the pulse of uncertainty coursing through her. Today's session loomed large in her mind, its potential to unravel or enrich their partnership with Thomas churning in her thoughts. She busied herself with her morning ritual, pouring coffee and thumbing through her notes for the day's session, yet the usual comfort of routine evaded her. The topic at hand was one she had prepared extensively for: the stories we tell ourselves and their intricate power in shaping our identities. But this time, she felt her own narrative intertwining with Thomas's. What stories dictated her need for control? What truths had she shielded from others? As she drove to the location, she recalled her own past struggles, how vulnerable she had felt at times when faced with the unfairness of her circumstances. In that reflection, she discovered a familiar blend of fear and resolve, a duality that now propelled her forward. She parked, took a deep breath, and reminded herself of the growth she was capable of igniting, both in Thomas and herself. When participants gathered, she welcomed them with an energy that pushed aside her apprehension. Thomas entered last, his expression a mixture of concentration and anxiety. He quickly slid into his usual seat, but there was something different, an almost desperate eagerness alive in his eyes that made her pulse quicken. "Today, we're going to confront the stories that stifle our potential," she began, her voice steady but animated. Let us start with an exercise. I want each of you to write down a belief or narrative you have about yourself that feels limiting. No hesitation, share it if you're comfortable. Silence draped the room as they scribbled their thoughts on paper. Lisa moved among them, glancing over shoulders, picking up on the dawning realizations etched on faces softened by introspection. Thomas's brow furrowed in concentration, the pages of his notebook flipping rapidly as he filled the blank space with hesitant strokes. Then, she called for volunteers. One by one, her participants voiced their struggles, each revelation a thread unfolding a more complex tapestry of truth. Lisa felt the energy shift, the burden of collective experiences fostering a deep connection among all present. But it was Thomas's turn that sparked a raw honesty she hadn't anticipated. I realize I've spent so much time thinking of myself as successful and others as less than, he coughed, breaking the thought that had choked his confidence. I've internalized metrics of worth that don't account for the depth of someone's experience. It's a trap. Lisa watched the room respond. A symphony of nods and murmurs of agreement underscored Thomas's admission. His struggle deeply resonated. He was not just laying bare his feelings, he was collectively reflecting their shared distresses. The revelation pierced through her defenses, igniting both a connection and a vulnerability in herself she hadn't prepared for. To break free from these narratives, we need to dig deeper, she said, feeling encouragement rise within her. Was it possible that Thomas's journey could mirror her own growth? Perhaps she could transform his understanding while discovering new facets of her own identity as a guide and a mentor. Think about what you can give back, she prompted, nudging everyone towards self-reflection. How might embracing your true story allow you to connect more deeply with those around you? The session unfolded with vibrant energy, yet within Lisa, something was shifting. As Thomas began to speak again, sharing more personal stories of his upbringing and misjudgments, she felt an alarming echo of her own past. The threads tethering their experiences seemed delicately woven, the potential for mutual growth amplified by their shared honesty. But as the conversations deepened, so did the gnawing doubt within her. Was it wise to delve into the tangled roots of her own history even as she facilitated his enlightenment? What if reliving her past, her mistakes, meant unraveling the stability she had worked so hard to achieve? By the time participants were ready to wrap up, Lisa found herself silently grappling with those questions. She was wrestling not just with the narratives of others but the very fabric of her identity. The challenge loomed large, intertwined with a seismic realization. The stories buried within could hold just as much power for her evolution as they did for Thomas. As participants filed out, her heart raced with anticipation and trepidation. Made vulnerable by the revelations of the day, she could no longer ignore her longing for deeper connection. What if they both dared to confront their pasts not just for the sake of professional progress, but for personal liberation? The very next meeting would require them to confront their stories head-on, threatening to dissolve the remaining barriers that separated Thomas's world and hers. What awaited her and Thomas in this raw, uncovered territory? Would they emerge from the fray transformed, or would their paths complicate further under the weight of shared burdens? As the next session approached, Lisa experienced an unsettling blend of excitement and anxiety. She arrived early, pacing the room to summon her composure, each step echoing the tumult of thoughts racing through her mind. Today was not merely another meeting, it was a turning point. She understood that delving into their narratives might unearth her vulnerabilities just as much as it would for Thomas. Participants trickled in, and Lisa welcomed them with a practiced smile, though she sensed an air of gravity in their collective presence. Thomas entered, his expression strikingly earnest. He didn't just seem eager, he appeared determined, a man on the brink of significant change. This was a stark contrast to the confident facade he often wore. Welcome back. Today, we're going to share our stories, Lisa announced, her voice steadier than she felt. But first, I want you to reflect on a pivotal moment in your life that shaped who you are today. Think about how it shaped your narrative. I'll share mine too. Silence enveloped the room, anticipation crackling in the air. Lisa sensed resistance beneath the surface among some of her participants. It was as if the act of sharing their truths felt like baring their souls. Yet, she couldn't afford to shy away from the vulnerability of sharing her own story. If she wanted to foster an environment of trust, she must step into the arena first. With trembling resolve, Lisa recounted her experience as a young mother, juggling the responsibilities of work and raising her child while wrestling with self-doubt. She spoke of feeling invisible, comparing her struggles to those around her, how they transformed her feelings of inadequacy. "I told myself I wasn't doing enough," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "But through that, I discovered resilience I never knew I possessed. I learned that our stories don't define us, rather, how we choose to respond to them does." As her narrative unfolded, she could feel her participants lean in, the shared human experience resonating around the room. Their stories began to seep into the conversation, revealing painful experiences that had transformed their identities. Tears were shed, and vulnerabilities emerged, illuminating the path toward empathy and understanding. Then Thomas spoke, raw and unfiltered. He recounted a family tragedy that had instilled in him a relentless pursuit of success, the insatiable need to prove himself that, until now, had clouded his perspective. "I've been running away from the truth of my past," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought success would shield me, but it only built greater walls." Lisa recognized that moment. It was a revelation not only for him but also for everyone present. They mirrored her feelings of inadequacy and inferiority, echoing the complexities of their identities, and she felt a surge of solidarity binding them closer together. But beneath this sense of connection, doubt flickered in Lisa's gut. Would others perceive her as a fraud, a mother stumbling in her journey even as she guided them? The fear gnawed at her mind as the notion crept in: what if this openness weakened her authority? Would exposing her flaws render her unable to support them? "Let us embrace the lessons in our struggles," she said, pushing through her uncertainties. "What if we focus not just on who we've been but who we can become?" The session cascaded into a torrential exchange of insights and realizations, each participant encouraged to embrace their unfiltered selves. Yet, within the rising tide of growth, she felt her personal quest flaring up yet again, a desire to confront the stories that haunted her, those whispering doubts that shadowed her moments of authenticity. As the discussions deepened, Lisa gathered the courage to push back against the nagging insecurities creeping in. What if she used her experience to become not just a guide but also a partner on this journey? The stories of her past could hold transformative power not just for her participants but for her, too. With each shared moment, Lisa felt a burgeoning sense of urgency to address the core of her own fears before the next session. Was she prepared to open up more than she ever had? As participants prepared to leave, a lingering resonance of transformation hung in the air. Lisa smiled, believing that perhaps real connection could arise from authenticity. But the question loomed darkly in her mind: if she dared to truly face her past and share it in full, would she emerge stronger or more vulnerable than ever before? Lisa sat alone in her dimly lit office after the session. The air was thick with unspoken possibilities, and she sensed an electric charge vibrating through her veins. What had begun as a process of guiding others had unfolded into something far more profound, a mirror reflecting her own unaddressed fears and longings. As she stared blankly at her cluttered desk, her mind replayed the stories shared that day, especially Thomas's poignant revelations. They had peeled back layers of the past, illuminating cracks in the foundations of their self-images. Yet beneath her enthusiasm for this newfound communion lay an unresolved tension. Was she genuinely prepared for the journey back into her history? She took a deep breath and pulled out a notebook, its pages worn and frayed from years of use. The act of writing had always been cathartic, a lifeline. She flipped to a blank page and began to outline her thoughts, methodically creating a map of her journey that would include the fear, the doubt, and ultimately, the lessons learned. With each word, her resolve firmed. She was ready to dive deeper. Her hand moved steadily as she reflected on her pivotal moments. The transition from being a bright-eyed college graduate to a young mother confronting the overwhelming demands of life had been nothing short of seismic. She recalled late nights filled with worry, the relentless ache of juggling responsibilities, and a career that felt so distant. The deeper she delved, the more she unearthed the fears that had restrained her, the insecurities that whispered she shouldn't aim for more. Could I relay this truth? She pondered. Could I face the judgments that might accompany it? With that thought, an unsettling wave washed over her. What if her revelations disrupted the very stability she sought to cultivate in her sessions? But the truth was clear in her mind now. If she were to guide others honestly, she had no choice but to align her narrative with theirs in authentic vulnerability. Steeling herself, Lisa finally found the courage to confront the heart of her struggles. She spent years crafting an image of competence while battling the inner critic incessantly reminding her of her failures. The idea that sharing her imperfections might somehow weaken her position loomed large, but she recognized it as an illusion. Vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's an opportunity for connection, she wrote firmly, underlining the statement. Preparing to face her story meant entering uncharted territory fully. The justifications she clung to began to unravel. Would it not require greater strength to acknowledge her struggles than to feign confidence? Having set her intentions, Lisa felt fatigue wash over her, a heavy cloak of weariness mixed with nowhere-to-go emotions. She closed her notebook, knowing she had already begun to navigate this delicate path of introspection. With each tick of the clock, there was an urgency knitting together her thoughts, compelling her to share not just for her participants' sake but for her healing as well. The time had come to face my past, it was my turn to allow my story to flow, she mused. As she walked to the window, feeling the warmth of the fading sunlight on her skin, doubt flickered once more. Would her team respond with empathy, or would they retreat? What if they saw her flaws and dismissed her entirely? Shaking off the fear, she resolved that authenticity would be her most powerful tool. She could be both a guide and a fellow traveler, carrying her own burdens while helping others to lift theirs. And so, Lisa prepared for the next session with a heart full of hope mixed with apprehension. An unknown path awaited her, one where she would not only encourage others to evolve but, in turn, reclaim her own identity. It was time to confront the dichotomy of her roles. When she arrived for the next session, she would not merely present her story, she would breathe life into it, inviting familiarity and acceptance, both for herself and others. Would Lisa be able to withstand the winds of judgment that might accompany her truth? The answer lingered uneasily in the air, much like the unresolved emotions etched across her heart. Lisa stepped into the meeting room, her heart pounding a rhythmic counterpoint to the confident facade she fought to maintain. The air buzzed with palpable tension, the unspoken history swirling among the participants akin to a dense fog. This would not be just another session, it was a reckoning, an intertwining of her narrative with those she guided, and she understood that no masks would suffice. As the others settled into chairs, Lisa felt the piercing looks of their faces, some familiar, others new. Doubts crawled beneath her skin, whispering disquiet into her thoughts. Did she truly have anything worthy to share that would resonate? Yet she steadied herself, recalling the commitment she'd made to confront her past. The room didn't need a polished version of her, it needed honesty. Thank you all for being here, she began, her voice a curious blend of strength and softness. Today, I want to invite you along on a journey not just of your stories, but of mine as well. There was a moment of silence, the weight of her words hanging in the air. She could feel Thomas's eyes fixate on her. Their previous interactions flashed through her mind, igniting a fire within to dig deeper. No turning back now, she needed to shed layers, unveil truths held too closely. Often, we think we need to show only our best selves, she continued, her gaze shifting around the room, locking in on each participant. But I've learned that our genuine selves, the messy, imperfect parts, are what connect us as human beings. A few nods of understanding encouraged her. Deeper breaths came, filling her lungs with a newfound sense of purpose. I've struggled as a single mother, balancing the demands of early career decisions with the pull of responsibilities at home. I feared I wouldn't be enough, that I might fail both as a parent and a professional. The confessions slipped from her lips, raw and unguarded. She caught sight of a young woman towards the back who sat listening intently, tears welling in her eyes. Lisa felt a rush of compassion. Here was a reflection of herself, a young mother wrestling with her own insecurities. That connection sparked something bold in Lisa, granting her momentum to break free from the suffocating grips of self-doubt. What I realized in the midst of chaos was this: vulnerability doesn't weaken us, it brings us together, she stated, her voice gaining strength. When we allow ourselves to be seen, we create an environment where others feel safe to share. We lift each other and ourselves in the process. She paused, letting her revelation resonate through the room, feeling invisible ties knit their way around their shared experiences. The atmosphere shifted, it became electric. An eagerness infused the space, as if they collectively sensed the beginning of transformation. One by one, her peers began to speak, unearthing stories of struggle and resilience. Each narrative echoed with elements of Lisa's own, linking them in a web of empathy. As they shared, she realized she wasn't crossing a chasm between herself and the participants. She was walking alongside them, every shared ounce of vulnerability dissolving any barriers. Yet, amid this collective healing, Lisa felt a sudden pang deep within, a trepidation creeping back in. What if her openness drew criticism or made her appear less capable? Would she emerge as a figure of respect or distant sympathy? She clenched her jaw, willing herself to remain anchored in the moment, to push through that discomfort. A palpable shift occurred as she witnessed the bravery of her peers, certainty mingling with apprehension, the same emotions she had wrestled with. We are all in this together, she reminded them. Let us move forward together, supporting one another as we face our own demons. A realization dawned. There was undeniable strength in shared stories, a treasure they could cultivate and pass around. A flicker of clarity ignited a plan in her mind. She could develop workshops focused on leveraging collective narratives for personal growth. The idea thrummed beneath her skin, a conduit not just for others but for transforming herself as well. As the session drew to a close, participants thanked her, eyes bright with understanding, and she felt lighter, the burden of isolation cracking as her authenticity formed bridges. But in the wake of this victory, doubts resurfaced. Was she prepared for the uncertainty of leading through both light and shadow? She stepped out, taking a breath that tasted of hope and trepidation. The transformation felt both exhilarating and precarious, like walking a tightrope above an abyss. Would the next session lead her into the depths she feared, or would it solidify this sense of community she craved? The next round of conversations loomed ahead, ready to test her limits. Would she step forward to claim her space among them, or would fear push her back into the shadows? With her heart still racing from the impact of the meeting, Lisa lingered in the hallway, catching her breath and letting the echoes of shared vulnerability settle within her. It was exhilarating to realize how her chosen path had begun to intertwine with the lives of others. Yet with every drop of certainty came waves of anxiety crashing back, reminding her of the impending decision looming over her aspirations. The workshop ideas batted around in her mind like restless shadows. She envisioned spaces where stories flowed freely, where the tangled threads of each individual's experience could be woven into a collective tapestry of resilience. But who was she to lead such an endeavor? The thought of facing the group again prickled her skin. The image of Thomas's piercing gaze haunted her. She could almost hear the unasked questions echoing between them. Does she really know what she's doing? Determined to silence that inner critic, Lisa returned to her office, the place she had built through sweat and hustle. The familiar scent of coffee hung in the air, bolstering her resolve. She opened her laptop, the screen reflecting endless possibilities. Ideas poured forth like a river breaking free of a dam. She could offer workshops focusing on aspects of personal growth, self-compassion, accountability, even journaling sessions where participants could explore their own narratives. Yet even as she crafted lesson plans, self-doubt wormed its way back into her consciousness. What if her insights were trivial? What if she was simply using others' stories to stitch together her own fragmented identity? How could she address her insecurities while leading others to confront theirs? Those questions lingered like a specter, nipping at her determination. As she pored over possible workshop structures, her phone buzzed a message from one of the participants from the last meeting. It read, "I can't stop thinking about what you shared today. Thank you for being brave." A small thrill shot through her. It was a reminder of the connection she had made with that young mother, the hope she had ignited. Maybe she wasn't just a mentor, maybe she was a guide on a shared expedition toward healing. But that realization was tempered by another flutter of anxiety. Was being a leader something she could truly commit to with authenticity and integrity? Focused, Lisa decided to outline the first workshop. Letting Go to Move Forward would be the title, a theme that resonated deeply with her current journey. She imagined creating a space for open sharing, where they could acknowledge and release past burdens. The concept flickered with potential, illuminating the darkness that threatened to swallow her doubts. In the midst of this keen sense of possibility, a phone call from her supervisor shattered her concentration. His tone was brusque as he asked for a moment of her time. The weight of his request gnawed at her instinct. What does he want now? The uncertainty hung palpable in the air like a dense fog, mirroring the tension she'd just emerged from. Sitting at the edge of her desk, she steeled herself as she answered, ready to either defend her emerging projects or face scrutiny for her ambitions. The stakes felt higher than ever. "I have some concerns about your recent work," he said, and just like that, the buzzing tension returned, wrapping around her thoughts. What if he dismissed her ideas? Would her drive to foster vulnerability and connection be reduced to a mere footnote in an evaluation? Lisa knew she had to lock in on her convictions, but that dread still clawed its way back into her mind. With every spoken word from him, she felt the ground beneath her shift. Would this encounter undermine what she had worked so hard to build? Would facing critical feedback pull her further into the shadows rather than the light of the transformative workshop she envisioned? As she navigated through his concerns, Lisa sensed a pendulum swing, the confidence she had earned in the previous session colliding with this new barrier. Uncertainty hung heavy, but it ignited her determination anew. The time had come to confront her fears directly. How would she respond when conflicted perspectives clashed? Would she embrace the opportunity to stand her ground, or would those doubts once again tip the balance away from her aspirations? The moment of truth was rapidly approaching, and Lisa could feel the weight of her choices settling firmly into her core. Lisa stepped into the community center with renewed purpose. Today was not merely a session but the unveiling of a new chapter in her life. The past weeks had woven a complex tapestry of struggle, resilience, and growth. In front of her, chairs filled with eager faces awaited the story she was prepared to share, a story that had transformed her from a woman defined by her circumstances into a leader marked by authenticity and tenacity. "Thank you all for being here today," she started, her voice steady but infused with warmth. "What we're going to explore today isn't just my journey, it's all of ours. We're here to lean into vulnerability and celebrate the triumphs that arise from our struggles." She felt a ripple of understanding in the room, sensing that they were on the precipice of something significant together. The freedom she felt in sharing her story had ignited a sense of community. The laughter and shared wisdom that had emerged during the past sessions were now the foundation upon which they could build. When she recounted her experience of juggling motherhood and career aspirations, the feelings of inadequacy the room reverberated with empathy. As she spoke, Lisa could see Thomas positioned near the back, visibly engaged. His journey had already shifted. He embodied the courage to grapple with his privilege and confront his past. As she continued to weave through her narrative, she caught glimpses of the transformation blossoming not just in herself but also in those around her, the connections being formed, the burdens being lifted. "Vulnerability isn't a flaw," she asserted, her voice rising with enthusiasm. "It's a bridge. A bridge we can step across toward one another." The expression on Thomas's face signaled understanding. This was more than just a platitude for him. It was a revelation, the bones of a newfound purpose beginning to solidify beneath his skin. Lisa set the tone for the evening's activity, inviting participants to step forward and share their own narratives, echoing her earlier openness. She noticed how hesitant some were to share, cocooned in their fears. But she encouraged them, coaxing out their stories with gentle nudges, assuring them of the safety this space afforded. One by one, voices echoed in the room, revealing struggles similar to her own. As they spoke of loss, dreams deferred, and the gut-wrenching doubt that shadowed them, the threads of resilience began to intertwine before her eyes. This was a community rising, each testimonial a liberation. After a particularly heartfelt story, Lisa felt the urge to introduce a new workshop proposal, one in which they collectively crafted a story of empowerment to share with the larger community. Imagine creating narratives that highlight our collective strength, our unity across differences. "We're no longer singular stories. We are a movement, a chorus," she proclaimed. This shared vision lit a fire in her chest. Thomas stepped forward. "I want to contribute," he declared, his confidence palpable. "I've spent my life measuring success in dollar signs, but what I've learned is that true success is in uplifting each other, listening, and being accountable." The room erupted in applause. There was no longer a wall between the deep-seated disparities that had once separated them. Encouraged by their exchange, Lisa felt a swell of pride. She had conquered her initial hesitation, embraced vulnerability, and in doing so, had cultivated an environment ripe for transformation not just for herself but for everyone in attendance. They were moving toward a future she had once only dreamed of. In the weeks that followed, the planned workshop series began to take shape. Each session became a stepping stone toward tangible outcomes. They developed a community project centered around storytelling, galvanizing participants to embody their truths and become advocates for each other. Over cups of coffee and in the warmth of shared experiences, Lisa witnessed the metamorphosis of individual lives. She recognized her role not merely as a facilitator but as a dedicated architect of a community driven by perseverance and confidence. However, the ultimate moment of validation arrived when they presented their project to the community an open mic night that celebrated each person's story. Lisa stood backstage, her heart pounding as she listened to the outpouring of triumph and hardship from the mic. This was affirmation that they had arrived at something meaningful, something real. When it was her turn, she took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight. As she shared her story wrapped in authenticity and shaped through their shared endeavors, she felt solid confidence and recognition enveloping her. The audience responded with warmth, and she reveled in the applause that acknowledged not just her willingness to share but the interconnectedness they had forged together. In that moment, she knew she had truly transformed. She had conquered the doubts that had once held her captive, earning her place within a narrative larger than herself. She wasn't just a single mother at a diner anymore. She was a woman who had redirected her course toward empowerment, uniting a community bound by shared stories of resilience. As she stepped away from the mic, the echoes of appreciation from her peers rang in her ears. Lisa had achieved exactly what she set out to accomplish, to foster a space where vulnerability paved the way for strength, and where each shared story became a beacon of hope for those still in the darkness. Every challenge she had faced transformed into an opportunity for growth. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a leader forged in the fires of adversity. And as she left the stage, a smile broke across her face. She understood the true power of connection, the satisfaction of realized potential, and the irreversible changes the journey had imparted. The awareness settled in. Her achievements were not merely about external reflections of success, but internal fulfillment, the deep recognition of her worth and capability to drive real change. The future held limitless possibilities, woven together by the stories they now carried forward. From that night on, Lisa knew she would continue to embrace her narrative fully, fueling her passion to impact lives, including her own, in ways she had never imagined. This was a celebration, not just of effort, but of the spirit of growth. And with this achievement, Lisa vowed to never turn back. She had reached a pivotal moment in her life where transformation met unshakable faith in herself. As she walked outside, the night sky glimmered with stars, as if welcoming her newfound journey ahead. She knew it was only the beginning. Now, it's your turn to embrace your story. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.